So today's training is about the 3 stages of making money as a government contractor. I describe these 3 stages because I feel like often advisors forget the whole reason that we small businesses or small business owners start a business in the first place. It's to make money, right? And they should be advising us on that, on how to make money. What you do with the money, the good work that you're going to do in your community, et cetera, that's up to you. But the reason we start a for-profit business is to make money. And if we didn't want that, we would start a nonprofit business to go down that path. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, right? How to make money, how to go down that track, that journey to making money. But it's in stages, and I really want to cover down on these 3 stages. Many small businesses, they struggle to make their first dollar. In fact, I was watching a video the other day with somebody saying 90% of the businesses that get started and that are out there rarely don't get to $1 million in revenue, and less than 1% get to 10. I don't know what their stats are, but that's pretty realistic from my experience with a lot of businesses out there, is they struggle along the way. And there's a whole other stat that many of you might have heard, but you might have heard this where people who were starting a business within the first year, this many closed, within the first 5 years, this many closed, et cetera. And I just think that's crazy, especially in the federal market, in the government contracting world. In this world, we have a clear path to success. And if I can be part of helping teach you that path, then and you're the right person to run a business or do what you're doing, then you're going to have the success, right? I believe that one of the biggest reasons that small businesses like yours struggle to make money is that we try to act like billion-dollar businesses instead of the size that we are. In fact, I was guilty of this in my last company. I used to use this phrase, we're a billion-dollar firm, revenue is not yet recognized. And that sounds pretty funny, tongue-in-cheek kind of a thing, and it's like, oh yeah, it's really trying to say where we're going. But actually it was a disservice, now that I look back, that I was putting too much pressure on me and my team that we should be operating like a billion-dollar company when we were not a billion-dollar company. And I equated to what I heard when I have 2 10-year-old sons now, but when I had kids, when they first came along, right? People said, watch out for this idea of treating a 2-year-old like a 16-year-old and a 16-year-old like a 2-year-old. And it totally made sense, right? Having too much expectation for a 2-year-old and lowering your expectations for a 16-year-old or treating them like they're irresponsible. And the idea behind this is I really want you to pay attention to, no offense, but you are a 2-year-old, right? If you're here in this training and you're struggling to make money, whether it's make your first money, your first 100,000 or your first million, you're still in that 2-year-old phase. Stop seeing yourself as a 16-year-old or a 30-year-old or something. Come back, and when you put yourself in perspective and you start acting your age, then you're going to realize this is what I need to do to succeed at this point. And then as I move forward, I'll have higher and higher expectations. But don't put those higher expectations on you today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results, and that's what I want for you. That's what I'm going to guide you through today's training. If you haven't seen this already, then get over and sign up for our Government Contracting Success newsletter. Join 11,000 other people in there. This is the place where we can bring information to you that you may have missed that we put out on YouTube or LinkedIn especially, or that I share in other ways, but it's all valuable government contracting information. If you look at one of my recent issues on the newsletter from earlier this week or in December, you'll see a lot of really valuable information to help you grow and move forward. So take a look at that, subscribe to it. The other thing I want to ask before we get started is just register for training, right? You're here for the training. There's 121 people who registered for training. And I really appreciate that because it shows, it allows us to reach back out to you and talk to you and share handouts if we're going to do that. But also, it just lets LinkedIn know that there's value in this training and they'll spread it to other people. And that goes to the last tip in this red box. Don't just come alone, right? Invite a few friends, invite your colleagues in your office or your teammates and let them know about this training because our goal is to help you succeed. And if you bring somebody along that you're working with and they learn this as well, you can take it away and succeed together. And that's a really important thing. Last thing before we get started, do me a favor, just as a quick survey into the chat, tell me what agency you're trying to target in 2024. right? What agency are you trying to target in the federal market in 2024? Put that in the chat. Okay, so we got 23 minutes and we're wearing dark sunglasses, a half a tank of gas, and we're on the way for anybody who's a Blues Brother fan. Let's talk about the overview of making money, right? These stages I talk about. And then through the training, I'm going to talk about these 3 stages individually. So the 3 stages from a basic level, right, is walk, crawl, run, feed yourself, get fed by your employees, and then grow your company. And so feed yourself is, from my perspective, when you're a small business owner and you're trying to get a small business up and running, you have a responsibility for yourself to make sure you're bringing in enough money to eat, right? I used to say, make sure you can eat. This idea of taking care of yourself and your family, that's a priority for business owners. If you don't do that, you put unnecessary stress on you and your family, right? And so make sure you're feeding yourself. The second thing is, as you go forward, you want to get fed by employees. And this is not a negative thing. This is just the normal transition, right? Where you begin to come into more of a supervisor responsibility and they're out being billable. And then the last part is growing your company. In football, I love this analogy, and I'm sorry if you don't understand football, and I'll explain it to you really quickly. But in football, there's a quarterback. The quarterback throws the ball to the receiver, and the receiver's job is not to run. The receiver's job is not to score. The receiver's job is to catch the ball. But sometimes in professional football, you can see a receiver miss the ball because they're thinking about running. They're thinking about scoring. They're thinking about being on television that night. Your job is to catch the ball, right? And so these 3 stages, it's that same thing. First, catch the ball, then run, then score. And when you do it, when you think about that way, you're going to have a lot more success. But when you keep trying to think of the end zone instead of catching the ball, you'll miss out on it. Stephen Covey, who wrote this book, The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and I know Jay Madigan's in here. He'll probably write that and put it in there for you. Thank you. Stephen Covey calls this in his habit 3, put first things first. And so when you look at everything you have to do, there's always the first thing that needs to get done before you move on to do something else. And that's feeding yourself, right? Feeding yourself is the first thing first in having a successful business. Okay, let's talk about stage 1, feeding yourself. And what do I mean about that? And maybe some of how can you do that? So I'm going to talk a lot about businesses and small businesses in the government contracting space. I'm really talking about service-based businesses. So IT, professional services, even construction is basically services. I'm not really talking, and my examples are not for those of you selling product. If you sell product, yes, my training is valuable to you, but it's a different angle because you don't really sell, you just bid. Unless you're in there trying to convince them to buy some new product. But usually for the people selling product, they're selling paper or medical equipment, things like that, right? And what I teach is a little different. But for service-based businesses, this is 100% the way that I would recommend you go. It's what I teach my customers. When I take on pro bono customers, meaning free customers, and I'm guiding them through the process, this is exactly what I'm doing to getting them to that stage where they're making revenue, feeding themselves first. And so think about it is where you're just thinking about starting a business. I have somebody I'm helping in the Army. They're coming out in a year, and so they're getting started with it. And that idea of helping them really understand, well, how do I come out and there's money already, there's revenue already, so I'm not losing income, and I'm able to take care of myself and my family. So you might be thinking about it, or you might be having just started a business and you've started in the last 3-6 months or something, and you're trying to figure out what to do, et cetera. Or worse, you might have been at this a while. I know there's some of you who might have been at this a year or 2 years and you're not making money. If I was at that stage, I would tell you to stop immediately and say, I'm starting a new company. Leave everything the same, including the company name, the website, and everything. But just in your mind, go, I'm going to start over and I'm going to go back to the basics and do the basics. If you do that, you'll forget about all the time you've put in already. And you just go back to the beginning and go, let me do what Neil's suggesting today. Not to speak in the third person too much. And the last thing I was saying is this might be you, right? Is if you're trying to run your business and you're living off your savings, you're going through your 401k or whatever, you're like, I got to really invest. Yes, you got to invest in your growth, but you need to be impatient, not patient, impatient for growth and for revenue. And you want to get that, right? And so let's talk about that. When I say feed yourself, what I really mean is go out and get a job, right? And I don't mean literally get a job, but I want you to think about that. When you start a company and you're an expert in a particular service, whether it's plumbing or artificial intelligence or data analytics, right? Whatever that is, if that's your expertise, if you said, you know what, I'm giving up this small business idea, then you would go get a job. Well, then don't do that. Just go get a job right now. And what I mean in the small business world, what a job means is that if you think about a job, like go get a W-2. No, we don't want that. So a consulting gig instead of a W-2 is a 1099, right? This consulting, I'm in there, I charge them some money. In fact, the customers I work with, I'm basically 1099 with them, right? But subcontracting is that next level. When you have your company and you work under another company, it's in the federal market on a federal opportunity, that's subcontracting, right? I'm not here to talk about this from a lawyer standpoint or FAR standpoint, but subcontracting is corp to corp contracting. And when you think about it this way, you'll remind yourself, let me go sell myself. The way I negotiate the contract, the subcontract, and who's filling out the 1099 or W-9 or whatever, right? That's the subcontracting. But what you need to do is go sell yourself. You're building a business, so sell off of your skills. If you're good at plumbing, get in there and say, we can help you. You talk to people, and I have whole separate training on how do you do subcontracting? How do you get in there? So go watch that. But it talks about how do you reach out to another small business owner and try to get a job with them as a subcontractor. If I was doing this right now, I would reach out and say, hey, I do social media. I'm really good on LinkedIn, right? I do these live trainings. I can do this for the government. I'm sure the government has these public affairs offices. So I would reach out to a small business who might be doing a broader set of communication and agency communication and say, hey, I can be the LinkedIn arm. And then by working with them, I would be working with them as a subcontractor. I'm not trying to actually be an employee, but I just want you to think of that way of the way you get fed is to think about getting yourself a job. Just the paperwork will be a subcontract. And now you're off to the races making money. So the first stage is feeding yourself. So the second stage of growth, right? And you really want to be careful going to this stage if you don't have any traction in that feeding yourself. But if you're solidly feeding yourself, you got income, or you're building your business before you leave your other job, that's kind of fine too. But this second stage is you want to get a certain amount of employees who are going to feed you through the profit. And so the idea is getting your salary from your employees. For today, let's just use $100,000. If you were getting $100,000, gross salary from your company, gross payment, whatever, then that's good enough for you. So that, and it's also good enough for me because it's easy math. This idea, though, you want to get your salary 100% from your employees, not from you billing out any particular hour, right? And so that's the idea. We're going through this transition. I don't know if I say it later, but this is the transition of going from working in your business to working on your business. This is where you transition out. This is also the first revenue stream. When I talk about revenue streams, I say there's three ways to make money in the federal market. You can subcontract under small businesses. You can prime contract with agencies, and you can subcontract with large businesses. And you want to go in that particular order: sub under small, then prime, then large, way down the road. And so this activity of getting fed by your employees is literally what I describe as revenue stream number one: feeding yourself. Subbing under smalls, right? And so that's really important. And then this is also where you begin to build relationships, because first you went out and got yourself that job as you're the very first subcontract for your company by getting yourself in doing some of the work, right? And so if you can do that, that's actually one of the best things to do, because you're able to get in the door and learn and build relationships and keep backfilling yourself. And so in stage two here, you're backfilling yourself as you go along. I wanted to give you an example of how this works, right? As you're building it. And so the idea is I need $100,000 in salary. If I get that, now I'm being fed by my employees. In order to get that, I need to live off the profit that's coming from them. And you can use whatever word you want, but basically net profit, right? Because you're part of the gross profit section as well. But if I want to make that $100,000 salary and I look at employees, I just play a numbers game. It's always a numbers game. So the profit margin on an employee is 10%. I want $100,000. If the average billable rate for my employees is $50 an hour, that means I need 10 employees billing out at $100,000 a year as a subcontract, right? On a federal contract. And that will generate $1 million in revenue. 10% of that is $100,000. So I picked it up. Anybody who's in IT or professional services, kind of the higher level professional services, your hourly rate should be $100 an hour or more, right? It's not unrealistic $100 an hour if you're in cybersecurity, cloud, data, cyber, et cetera. And so if you're looking at $100 an hour, you just need 5 employees billable for the profit to be coming back to you, paying your salary. My last company, we were in 20% net profit. So we were able to do it even faster. And that's what I want you to think about, right? If you can get yourself in and get fed, then you can start building those relationships to find, basically, in this case, all you need is 5 companies willing to give you one billable position on their contract. I talk about how to build strategic relationships, and you want to build 8 strategic relationships with small businesses. And so if you had 8 strategic relationships and each one of them, said, yeah, let's bring you on and give you one position on our contract a year, then you've exceeded what you need. You'll have 8 employees, not 5. Or, if you need 10, then you're just aiming for 2 employees from each one of those strategic relationships. What I want you to understand, though, is sometimes we're trying to see this big picture. And the reality of growing your company is as simple as get yourself a job in there as the first subcontract, and then bring in 5 or 10 employees to guarantee that you can eat. So then you can move into stage 3. Stage 3 is where you're growing your company, right? This one's really important for me because so many small businesses, maybe you too, look to the growth of your company when you're way too early. Remember that 2-year-old and 16-year-old thing? Growing your company is a 16-year-old task, and we keep putting it on ourselves as 2-year-olds. But the reality is that's stage 3. First, you need to do stage 1 and then stage 2. Stabilize you and your company, then start growing it. And so in stage 3, the third stage is when you start looking at prime contracts. You don't look at them until you get to this stage. It's when you start looking at pursuing contract vehicles. I talk to people all the time who look at GSA and go, oh, I got to get, even my older brother, he got on a GSA. I remember when I was getting into government contracting, he was like, I hate GSA schedule. It sucks. We got it. They said it was going to be a lot of money and it's not, And I literally was talking to somebody else yesterday when they were saying something similar, that if we get this thing, this contract vehicle, whether it's, whatever vehicle it is, right? If we get this contract vehicle, it's going to mean this money. And the contract vehicle doesn't mean anything. A lot of us used to call it a hunting license. And what I like to say, if it's a hunting license, then congratulations, the government gave you a hunting license. Now you need to go in the woods and walk everywhere around the woods and try to find a deer and have that deer stand still long enough that you can bring it home for dinner, kind of thing, not to get all gruesome. But, a contracting vehicle doesn't give you any money at all. It just gives you the option to compete in a smaller pool. But you're still competing. You still have to do stuff. And so why do that early on in your business life, right, in your company's growth? You do this in stage 3 when you're stable enough and you can start pursuing it smartly. And then also stage 3, this is when you start caring about the FAR. I often hear, especially non-business owners, talk about how important the FAR is. The FAR is useless if you're not making any money. It's the most useless document ever compared to a bunch of other documents I might say are useless, right? What's the point of FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the money, when I'm not making any money at all, right? What business owners need to do and what you need to do is to make money. As you make money in stage 1, you don't really need to know the FAR at all because that's what the prime is doing. Yes, there's situational awareness of the FAR, but you don't need to know it because really you're going in, doing hard work, you get a clearance and you're billing them. But fundamentally, when you're a subcontractor, you're not a government contractor. You're doing commercial business. This is a really good tip for 8A firms to keep in mind. The 8A program, it talks about having that blend. If you get subcontracting, you're not doing 8A business. You're not even doing prime government business. You're subcontracting. And subcontracting is commercial business, really at its core. Never go out and work for Bank of America or something. Instead, work for Booz Allen, and you're still in the government space, but you're doing commercial work because that's who your customer is Booz Allen, even though their end mission is the Army or something. And so the FAR, when you think about the FAR is something you need to pay attention to as you start going down this path of priming. But when you're in stage 1, just trying to get yourself billable, or you're in stage 2, trying to get 5 or 10 billable employees on different people's contracts, there's not really a lot of FAR activity in there. And in fact, and it'd be interesting to see if somebody says this, but my understanding is that no one needs to be in SAM even as a subcontractor, right? Some of us primes might say, hey, we want you in SAM. But really, that's not a requirement in there. Otherwise, how can we sell software that's coming from people who are not in SAM? But this idea of understanding the FAR, it's important, but it's important at its own time. So as you start looking at prime contracting, now you really need to start understanding the FAR. And you only need to understand the FAR as far as it matters. And so I run into contracting officers all the time, and you can tell they don't know the FAR thoroughly. They know certain parts of it. It's like saying a single lawyer knows all the law, or accountant knows every aspect of accounting. They don't. They know two things: their specialty and the ability to find more information. And so your journey along with the FARs should be the same thing. Learn just the parts of the FAR that matter and just continue to grow your knowledge. But at some point, as business owners in particular, if that's what you are, you're going to hire somebody who's a FAR and a contract expert, and you'll turn to them, right? I don't need to be a legal expert. I don't need to be a financial expert. I need to be aware of those things, but I can hire them. So stage 3 is when you start looking at these regulations that are out there. It's also, by the way, when you start looking at tags. These tags like women-owned small business, service-disabled veteran-owned small business, hub zone, 8A, those are all useless when you start a company. Too many of us, me included, we start a business, we're like, oh, we got to get tags. It's like, no, you got to get business. You got to go get yourself fed, and then you got to get somebody to work for you so you can get fed. Then you can look at the certifications and the tags. We might argue that if you had a tag, you might be able to go in on a similarly situated entity situation. That's just rationalization, though. If you're trying to get yourself certified as a woman-owned small business or a hub zone, it's taking time and you're not making money, you're working on the wrong things. We call this constructive procrastination. Instead of learning how to go sell yourself to people who would really value your data expertise or your painting expertise, instead of doing that, you're trying to jump through the hoops of the SBA or something to get certified. But those certifications are down the road. Stage 3, right? This is where they start becoming important. This is where you start doing deeper dives into an agency. If you're not making any money, do not become an expert on an agency. Instead, become an expert on small businesses who are winning at particular agencies. Then as you start making money, you can have the luxury and the time to learn about the agencies. The next one is events. This is another big one, right? We all start business and we're not making money, and we go to conferences, we go to vendor outreach sessions. We're like, oh, well, if we go to that HUD event, we might run into other businesses and see them. It's like, well, no. That's, again, like I call it a crutch. Certainly constructive procrastination, but a crutch. You think, well, instead of me doing work here at my office, I'm going to go to that event, and there I'm going to have the miracle of running into people who go, oh my gosh, Neil, it's great to see you. I've been dying to give work away. Compared to if I sit in my office and I say, where do I want to go? What services do I offer? What small businesses have complementary services? For example, if I do artificial intelligence, maybe me teaming up with a company that does software development or even network engineering or something, or data analytics, that would make sense. And so let me go find the small businesses in FPDS that are winning, or USA Spending, right, that are winning in this space. Let me go find the business owner's information within DSBS. Let me call them up and say, hey, Jane, I do this expertise. I'm looking for a company I can sit there and team up with over the next couple of years as a subcontractor to bring my expertise and learn government contracting. I'm really good at artificial intelligence, but I'm not that good at understanding the government space, and I'd love to team with you. Are you open to a call? Right? Instead of going to an event, pick up the phone and call these small businesses. You can call 25 people a day, 50 people a day, and find those companies that are going to be welcome to the conversation. And then from them, you'll find people who will want to work with you and put you on the team. The last one is same thing with women-owned small business tags and things like that. Certifications like ISO or CMMI, et cetera. Those are all great to have, but they're down in the journey, right? They're farther in our journey. In the beginning, we need to make money, feed ourselves, then feed ourselves through the profit that comes from our employees. Then we slowly start growing our company through the small business certifications, maybe looking at some priming, et cetera. So hopefully that makes sense. And that one, here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First thing is the 3 stages, right? Feed yourself, get fed, and then grow. So wherever you're at, back up for 1 second and say, let me go back to the farthest left stage. The second thing is stop that constructive procrastination. Stop doing heavy amounts of research. If you're not making money, stop the heavy research. Go find small businesses who would value you being on their team. You get money, you get to learn from them, and they get the value of what you bring to them. And then number 3 is start calling 25 people a day. If you're not making money or $100,000 or $1 million right now in the federal space, start calling 25 people a day. It doesn't really take that long, 1 hour or less. to do this. And when you do, you start building relationships with these 8 small businesses that serve as the beginning part of your growth and where you're going to go. Hopefully that makes sense. If it did, do me a favor and put process into the or process rocks into the chat. Let me know you understand that success just requires you to have a process and then to follow that process, and you'll get there. So process rocks. By the way, if you're getting here a little late, make sure you're registering for our training. We do training every single day. I've got 2 more this week or 3 more this week. 2 more. I don't know what day it is. Today's Wednesday, right? So 2 more this week, and I've got 20 more lined up for the next 4 weeks. And so make sure you're registering for those. Subscribe to the newsletter. That's where I put the information out about the training. And then if you're looking for support, right, I teach for free all the time the how. I don't hold any information back. But if you'd like my help and my team's help on accelerating the growth of your company, feel free to go over to govconchamber.com and learn more about how we can help you. For all of us, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.